David with No Chaser, and for today's topic, it's gonna be kind of depressing. I mean, okay, look, let me explain something. I don't mean to make things depressing or only talk about the bad stuff of addiction or recovery. You know, I mean, honestly, full disclosure. If you want more inspirational, rah cheerleading recovery type stuff, this might not be the video series for you. What I like to do is I like to talk about things that are real, that I have faced in this stuff. And I'm not claiming to be any sort of arbiter of advice or wisdom or anything like that. These are just like insights that I have, whether you agree with them or not. Anyway, but I mean, this is one of those things that was, I remember being in treatment multiple times, and there was always at least one segment or one group or class that went over this certain topic that was amongst all the depressing things in rehab that you'd cover. This was one of the most. Seemed bleak, but it's important to talk about. So it is known as PAWS. Not like pause, but post-acute withdrawal syndrome. Sometimes it's known as post-acute withdrawal symptoms. I don't know. By the way, I don't know why they gave such an awful thing, such a cute name like PAWS. But anyways, so what post-acute withdrawal syndrome is so when you first get off drugs or alcohol, you go through withdrawals, obviously. You detox, do all that good stuff. And that's the acute part of it. When you got the shakes or, you know, the heroin flu or, you know, the meth passed out for 7 days or just whatever thing you're going through. And what PAWS is that it is something that lasts, I'll get into it, but it's something that goes beyond that is still symptoms of you withdrawing from drugs or alcohol. So it's kind of strange because there's no real rhyme or reason to it. And what these type of symptoms are, so the most noticeable one is that sometimes, like even months later, you'll feel like types of physical withdrawal syndromes where you may have the shakes for a couple months afterwards, or they'll come back. You may have that kind of foggy brain that you had before when you were just going through withdrawals. That could come back. You know, like things like lack of coordination, like those types are those physical ones are the ones that are more like easy to notice as like, oh, I think this is like, you know, post-acute withdrawal syndrome because I have no idea why I'm going through this. Again, there's no real timetable for this type of stuff, but the one that has plagued me the most as a person who's attempted recovery and gone through this over and over again and has dealt with PAWS a whole lot is the mental and emotional factors of it. So the main symptoms of this is that you can fall into depression or anhedonia, which is like losing interest in stuff, a hypersensitivity to stress. You know, and the crazy thing is, if you think about this, you know, getting off drugs and alcohol is an adjustment in and of itself. Like you may have these things just because, you know, your life is no longer with drugs and alcohol. You have to adjust to life as it is. And the other thing too is that it can be hard to differentiate what is PAWS and just what's life. Life can be stressful. Life, you can just fall into depression. You know, I suffer from clinical depression, and so, you know, it's been so long since I've played this game of is this PAWS or is this depression or is this life? But I could start to kind of really feel when this was like the post-acute withdrawal symptoms that were occurring with me. And so the thing is that it seems like this addiction shit never ends, right? You know, right when you get detoxed and you're starting out and you're working your recovery, it's just like,
just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Yeah, that is a reference to an old movie that I don't even remember what movie it was. I just seen it through memes and stuff. Some Al Pacino movie. Anyways, so the thing is that the main of all the sort of literature and evidence of it that they've put forth is that the post-acute withdrawal syndrome can last anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Now, here's one thing I will say though. You know, I want to preface this by saying that as not great as this sounds, you know, I really think of it as one way. It's like, oh, this could be difficult. It's like, oh man, you have to put up with this shit while you're just trying to adjust to life and get in recovery and all this type of stuff and just, you know, repair relationships, deal with, you know, the wreckage of your past, as they call it, or, you know, trying to make amends for all the shit you did. And like, now I have to deal with this too. But the way I think about it is that, like, you know, honestly, think about it, what is your other option? To go back to drugs and drinking? So it's like, you could deal with this stuff and it could be, a real struggle and tough and a lot of inner turmoil, or you could live under a bridge. And there's times where I would just like, you know what, fuck it, I want to live under a bridge. But not really. I say that, and then when you actually live under a bridge, you're like, maybe I'll deal with the post-acute withdrawal syndrome and trying to have a normal life. But this is something that I know really, it hits people, and it leads a lot to relapse because there's this sort of, you're trying to get your life back together, and then these things like depression hits, or, you feel out of sorts physically and, mentally and emotionally. And, it's already a grind to stay sober, depending on how long you'd been using before, or, what go around this is, if you relapse before, it's already difficult enough. And then when this sort of thing hits you, this is what happened to me personally, is that I would go through these types of symptoms, and then I would be okay. I would just kind of get through it, rely on others, try to do all this type of stuff. And then the obsession would hit. And when I was at this low point, especially the anhedonia, the lack of interest in things, and the, nothing, I can't find enjoyment or contentment in anything, when I would be stuck in that, and then the obsession to drink out of nowhere would come, it would be pretty difficult. That's what led to quite a few relapses. And the idea is always that it gets better. It just over time. And the thing is that what makes it difficult in recovery is that there's not a normal trajectory of things. It would be nice if it was like things get better. So let's say you start at like this low point, like you're really low, but then just slowly but surely you're just moving your way up. Even if it takes like quite a while, you're just getting better and better, exponentially or progressively or whatever. But a lot of times, and especially with pause, it doesn't work like that, to where sometimes you feel a lot better, and then you go down, and then you feel much better, and then you go way down, and then you're kind of slowly building back up, and then you go down. Like it, the thing is, if you actually like were to look at that trajectory and like from a wider scope, you would see that over time, even though it goes up and down, it does get better. But man, when you're just in it, it just really doesn't feel like that. And the thing about post-acute withdrawal is that there's a lot of things that, like, for me, is that it would really chip away at some of like the lack of faith in this process, or that things would get better. Or you talk about, one of the main killers of recovery, the hopelessness, because it would just be like, ugh, like, is this all that life is just grinding through this type of stuff? And it's weird, even though if you haven't used drugs or alcohol in a long time, that still is a little part of your brain. Your brain's trying to heal itself, and it's still weirdly your addiction talking. Even if you're not in the thick of it, even if you're not in active addiction, it's still talking to you in a way. It's still like kind of this sort of like virus that's slowly dying, and it's just making outbursts to just bring you back in. And, what I always try to remember is, one thing is that, of course, what is your alternative? To live under a bridge. And the other thing is that, this is what I try so hard, and I struggle with this so much, is that just to remember, and this is so important, is that these things pass. I mean, I can't stress enough. It's probably heard in AA and any other sort of recovery room, in refuge and Dharma recovery, just any type. It's the same idea that things pass, whether they're good or they're bad. And, what I think the thing that really hurts is that the idea of post-acute withdrawal, when you go through this high stress, and you're out of sorts, and you're dealing with all the other natural stuff that comes with trying to rebuild your life, that it could just be discouraging, and by the way, someone that's trained in instant gratification, I know that I just want things to get, maybe I wouldn't be so greedy to say I want things to get better right away, but I want them to follow a pattern of like, okay, every day it needs to get a little bit better and better. And if I hit a setback, then, I start to freak out because I'm like, what's going on? This is the end of the world. And you could look up a lot of probably much more scientific or, like well-doctored lectures about post-acute withdrawal syndrome. For me, this is a person-to-person just experience with it. And it's something that I like, a lot of people don't really know about. Like I mentioned that I saw, I had classes about it and things that I looked it up, and then in treatment they taught it, but like some really don't cover it, and some people are just unaware. So some people totally get like blindsided by it because they just go like, why do I feel this way? I've been 6 months sober. I've been 7 months sober. I've been a year sober. I've been a year and a half. Like, why is this like coming to? Why Why do I feel this huge setback when I've been doing everything right? And the thing is that, as I mentioned, it may sound kind of depressing or a little bit bleak, like, holy crap, this lasts so long, and this is another thing on top of that you have to struggle with. The one thing is that, if you think about it, where you hit maybe these lulls in your life, or you hit these issues that come to be, but the more you make it through, the more, positive momentum that you can build up. And the one thing is too, is that I know a lot of people that struggle with mental health, is that they have this weird sort of comfort in the idea that they at least have a diagnosis. Like, as much as people don't like labels or anything, I know some people that for a long time they struggled with mental health issues, and they were just like, I don't know why I feel this way. And then there was a sort of at least release when they were given a diagnosis. At least I have a name to this thing. At least I have some idea of what the hell is going on in my brain. And that's one thing that, considering and understanding what pause is that if you go through this type of stuff, you can at least tell yourself, like, this is what it is. My brain isn't broken. I'm not freaking out. This is just what is going on in my mind, and this is something to get through, but this is not, again, can't stress enough, this is not like I'm doomed or my brain will always be this way. This is just what, occurs when you're trying to recover from addiction and alcoholism. So anyways, as I mentioned on the last episode, if you didn't see it, me and Brett from Rev Left have started a new podcast, Shoeless in South Dakota. It is a very different type of podcast. It does deal with, addiction, mental health type of stuff like that. Then just a whole bunch of other nonsense, but silly nonsense. So I will put the link again in that. Check it out. If you like Brett from Rev Left, I know a lot of the people that came over here, to watch me came from one of his public podcasts I did. We have a whole backlog of episodes just talking about all the, a lot focused on addiction and mental health, but, a lot of other stuff too. Just check it out. I think if you like my videos, or if you like, Brett's content, you'll absolutely like that. But other than that, I wish you all well. If you're in recovery, stay strong, keep doing it. If you're in active addiction or you're drinking right now, I just wish that there's the least amount of suffering you could feel, and hopefully you find your way. And if you're just watching this because you're just curious or interested in it, I'm glad you're watching. And other than that, be well.